Alright, so VR sloth placation groups is basically what their main, well, it's a part of a whole series of things that they do in these satanic S&M clubs, okay? So VR sloth placation groups, those people, a lot of times they'll have explanations that'll revolve around. See, in the past, military guys used to, they used to explain or deprogram, or they call it wake up. They have a whole different series of ideas on everything, and then these different terms for the same fucking thing. The whole idea is that the VR sloth placation groups, they have already been told, and so part of their little counter op of psychopedoid geniusness or something is to placate a VR slothing that justifies the need to be deprogrammed, and that those people more than likely would have already been told the accurate information about what they were doing and shit. And so essentially they attempt to have like opinions or something after that. And it's like once they give the information of the deprogramming, if they still are just doing what they're supposed to stop doing after waking up. And so that's when basically whatever their fucking comes out of their dumb mouth doesn't actually matter after that. This is where they still think that their little opinions would matter even after what is other groups that basically were kind of doing the same thing and then had military personnel like waking them up and telling them exactly what they're not allowed to do and shit. And then those people usually normal. I mean, they're not normal, but most of the time people will stop after that. And so these VR sloth placation groups that exploit the VIP cameras and shit, those people, they they have taken everything that they've ever done in their life to the fucking extreme, and that they're raging psychopaths, and that they are not deprogrammable. They just refuse to stop doing it. Okay, they do. And that is where they'll have a whole series of stupid explanations to everything. But in the end, they're just maintaining a high price contract on maintaining a link to the camera eyes that essentially probably pays a huge portion of their expected money influx each month or year, whatever, to their S&M contract. See, whatever their contract is, essentially has stopping points where they have to pay some pretty expensive hacks that they pay for that allows them to go through their contract. And they, a lot of times they sell drugs. This VR exploitation is part of it. See, the bigger the contract, the more likely they'll be doing the VR sloth exploitation on these rich people all over LA and elsewhere, and other people, and CIA agents. This is in Pentagon and presidents and senators and shit like that. And then they also create slaves and shit that they let people fuck around with for money and shit also. And so essentially, the bigger and more top level the mercenary contract is, basically, the more likely they'll be doing this VR sloth placation stuff. And that, because it's like, say Taylor Swift had a pair of camera eyes or something. See, the ability for the hacker group that would potentially have like a hack on her cameras and into the speaker, the potential for selling like a John Malkovich portal basically is like pretty top. They probably get a whole shit ton of money out of stuff like that. And that is where that shit ton of money merely gets them there, where they have to pay for some sort of extreme high level access hack of some sort. And so that is like where to probably attain the amount of money that it would take to do some top level like Pentagon style hack or something like that. A lot of times they pay just huge shit tons of money. So part of their hacking contract includes a way to gather the money, and the super high priced hacks take super high priced methods of gathering money. And so this VR slothing becomes one of their main avenues of collecting. Because see, some of the other hackers that do theoretical mercenary hacker contract, basically, a lot of them just they sell drugs for lesser expensive hacks. They sell drugs, so they become. I mean, it's the same similar method. They get along to a stopping point that then has them like selling drugs or something to collect a bunch of money that then pays for the next hack. Instead of doing the hack themselves, just pays for a hack. And so that's where these groups that do this weird 50 gray kind of shit, okay, they are the ones that also do the VR exploitation of camera eyes a lot of the times. And that then those people are usually involved in a bigger, more grander mercenary style full circle contract of insertion. It's like I talked about the fuck clubbing of a company or of Amazon or whatever. See, those come in the form of huge contracts that, in lots of ways, require like hacking uh, payments. Okay, they gotta like pay top level hackers basically to do certain aspects, but then they also are like inserting themselves. They're training and inserting themselves. That's part of it. And so that would be an example of a grander, like, mercenary contract, okay? And so that is where the grander the contract, the more likely that they'll be doing these really expensive money gathering methods or the really high priced money. I mean, this is like where child trafficking and snuff films and this VR sloth exploitation stuff. That's the kind of stuff that like brings in a shit ton of money, and that is where whatever they're doing requires a shit ton of money on their mercenary contract, and that's why some of the that's why like you'll find these hacker groups that'll just be like literally they'll just they'll just be doing like a regular kind of hacking contract that won't really require much money, and then they probably won't understand why people would be doing that type of stuff just to be doing a dark web hacker contract. Okay, but see, the reality is that the people that are doing stuff that would be like it would be like a battling or CIA type of a contract is the people that do the child trafficking stuff and the fucking VR sloth exploitation stuff. And people that do like this severance kind of shit, okay? It's like that is like what it is. Because, you know, I can I know I'm a researcher of this stuff, and that is where I I researched what was the basics to the fundamental basics to what the hacker contracts operate as. And then I found these groups that were doing extremely expensive stuff in a similar same hacking contract system, but that they were doing extremely highly illegal, highly risky, highly psychotic stuff that I know brings in shit tons of money. And that essentially it's meant for that money to be used for a bigger purpose than just like some weird nerds that are hacking or something. It's a little different. But essentially it's like they basically are slave contractors. I mean that's what it is. They're slave contractors to people outside of, of for an enemy agency, basically. And that is what the more high risk it is, the more likely they'll have FBI agents, the more likely they'll have cops, the more likely they'll have politicians and governance and stuff, mayors and shit like that, okay? Honestly. And that the higher the risk, the more likely that they'll have those type of people. See, the lesser the risk, if that some of those little dumb hackers ever got busted, they would essentially get a slap on the wrist, but they're not doing anything that's very risky, basically, in a comparison way. So they usually don't have any cops, they usually don't have any politicians or anything. It's the ones that are doing the extremely illegal stuff for some sort of enemy agency that usually have all those fucking cops and executives in people's companies and you know, and politicians and shit included in the profile group, basically. And that is where the hacking contracts, when they take their, because they're blackmailed horribly, when they take the contract, they don't get the money needed to run it. They end up having to make that on their own. And so the hackers is pretty much the same with their little stupid little hacks and stuff. They have to make the money themselves if it comes to a stopping point that requires money. Nobody's given the money needed to run those contracts. They're all, that money is generated within the contract. And so basically, if you know people that are doing the VR sloth placation, always constantly attached to the camera eyes, always constantly unable to get them to stop doing it and maintaining it constantly. Those are the people that are doing the extreme, like, enemy agency contractor stuff.